Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM, channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Small businesses and the big markets are reeling from President Trump's new tariffs. New Jersey Senator Cory Booker says it's time for Americans to get into some good trouble, and D.C. is rolling out a new effort to keep youth out of trouble. We have those stories and so much more as we sit at the Reporters Roundtable. My guests are Brandon Tinsley, national politics reporter for Capital B News, political analyst Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, and James Wright, D.C. political reporter for the Washington Informer. Thank you all for joining this conversation. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So China has already hit back at President Trump's tariffs with 34% duties on U.S. goods. And, the economists have warned that this was going to be problematic. I'll start with you, Avis. How long do you think this is going to last? What is going to be the impact on American consumers? I'm sure that it's making you think again about that Bentley you were planning on buying.
Yeah, don't think that's a good idea at the moment. No, in all seriousness, this is really bad news for consumers, and it will hit people all up and down their lives, just everywhere from the grocery store to if they need to purchase a new car and everything in between. In terms of how long it will last, it will be interesting to see, because we have seen Trump do things like this before, and the minute he in essence sees the writing on the wall with it, very quickly he will back down. Like, he talks a good game, but he does seem to wimp out. However, this one is so comprehensive, hitting so many countries all at the same time. Interestingly, leaving out his boyfriend Putin. Okay, but everybody else, okay, pretty much is getting hit here. It would be harder perhaps to unwind this. So we'll just have to see. The bad news is the big loser in this is the everyday consumer who is going to have to pay more for everything that they need just in terms of living their lives. So we're all losing as a result.
Brandon, you were nodding your head.
No, I mean, these are the kinds of things that I've been hearing from people doing reporting, where this was one of the biggest issues that Kamala Harris talked about on the campaign trail, right? Was, if Trump were to impose these kinds of tariffs, what would be the impact on people here in the U.S.? And so this is something that people have been worried about, I think, for a while, but just like many things that have happened since January 2025, he's been following through on it. As Dr. Ava said, might wimp out. But I think it's one of those things where people are entering a new stage of what this new reality looks like. There have been so many ways that people across the country have been affected since January 2025. And now with these tariffs, it feels like we're going to get hit on just a very micro level. Almost everything that you could possibly think of just going up price wise. And so when I think about the communities that Capital B covers, I think about the disproportionate impact that this will have on Black people across the U.S. in particular.
Yeah, I was about to say that to James as well. We know that this is going to impact all Americans. Even those who have a couple of quarters will feel this. But James, even in our community, which is certainly economically diverse, but Black people are going to feel this too.
Yes, we are going to feel this too, and we're going to feel it because we are the ones who are more dependent in terms of government aid. We're more dependent in terms of nonprofit largesse, things like that. The thing that really bothers people, Harold, is that many people that I talk to are wondering, why are we even going through this? Why are we having these tariffs? What is the purpose of these tariffs? I mean, you had tariffs during the William McKinley administration back in the early 1900s. But
yeah, I remember that.
There was a reason for that. There's no reason for these tariffs. There is just no reason for it. And a lot of people are just scratching their heads saying, why are we doing this? And yes, we as Black people are going to be affected more by this than anyone else.
Yeah, I do want to talk about, something else that is obviously connected to this as it relates to the administration and our community. We've seen more and more federal government workers lose their jobs. RFK Jr. Laid off some 10,000 people from the Department of Health and Human Services. And then, of course, yesterday it was reported, there are some people who need to come back. We are seeing some closures, and we're even seeing some layoffs, and this may be tied to tariffs, but also from these federal government layoffs in the Midwest. It's really troubling for the economy. James, again, what do you see as the end game?
Look, Elon Musk did this all wrong, Harold. What he should have done is that he should have done a comprehensive study of every cabinet department, of every agency, to determine the efficiency of that agency, and then made the appropriate cuts, if there were to be cuts, if necessary, at a later report, put out a report, let's say in July and August or something like that, if he would. But no, what he had to do was just run around with drills and stuff and say, I'm going to cut people just arbitrarily without considering the level of experience, the level of expertise that is in these agencies. And the American people are going to feel it because of that lack of poor management.
Avis, your thoughts about it. I'm sure that everyone here in this conversation knows someone who has lost their job, knows someone who is concerned about possibly losing their jobs. A friend of mine who works for the IRS told me just this morning that there are some emails that are going out and that some of the managers have already lost jobs just this week.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say, actually, Elon is doing exactly what he was brought in to do. This has absolutely nothing to do with efficiency. First of all, let's stop accepting their framing as truth. Okay. This has absolutely nothing to do with efficiency. This has to do with, as what Steve Bannon said was the goal during his first administration. This is about the deconstruction of the administrative state. And now we have a situation where he has no one around him who is holding him back at all. He has people around him who are completely his folk, including actually Elon is kind of like, I don't know, it's almost like a co-presidency. But I will say that these are all extremists. He's surrounded himself with extremists. They are eliminating any leadership or anyone who would be looking out for malfeasance. All of those people are being fired. They are randomly firing all of these people because they're trying to undermine the success of any of these departments. They are looking to really be able to eliminate many of these departments and many of the things that they are doing, that the government has done, in a bid towards either privatization writ large, or as it goes for Elon, it's about redirecting contracts to his companies from other competitors that he has. There's a reason why they're doing all this, and it has nothing to do with the good for the American people. It has to do with the amassing of more wealth for Elon and his ilk, and specifically completely undermining the success and the ability for government to succeed. And finally, I would say it's also about a very directed desire to hurt certain populations. I mean, it is not unknown that, for example, Black people make up a disproportionate number of federal workers. What we are witnessing right now is an all-out assault in many ways. This is one, but there are many ways that they're doing this on Black economic power And the ultimate goal here, if you ask me, is about the restructuring and the reorganizing of our society. This is about societal reconstruction. It is not about at all trying to be efficient. That is one of many big lies that this administration is telling, and we can see it by what they do, not by what they say.
Brandon, I have a different question along these same lines. What do you believe the pushback pre-midterm elections will look like as it relates to these kinds of mass layoffs or firings that we're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we could see is something that I think we're supposed to see on April 5th, right? With these protests that are supposed to be happening in all 50 states. So these mass sort of participatory sort of movements where people can disrupt business as usual, disrupt the way that we tend to move about society, right? If this government is trying to take over what has come before, then how do you sort of try to break that grip? And so I think these kinds of mass movements are things that we'll continue to see. The one that's scheduled for April 5th is supposed to be the largest protest since Trump took office. But I think one thing that we are keeping an eye on at Capitol B is also what sort of pushback looks like from Black political leaders. So Cory Booker had his marathon speech earlier this week. We've seen different legislators introduce bills to abolish super PACs, their ability to spend in political campaigns. And so I think it really will be this sort of broad sort of pushback to look at the different ways that, it's not just a one size fits all sort of model. So I definitely think those are things to keep an eye on in the months ahead, especially going out to the midterms. And actually, I think one more thing I would say is, I've heard some people talking about, like specifically federal workers, talking about one thing that they think ought to happen is people who have lost jobs, who have been fired because of these cuts. There are so many people who have been affected in very deep ways that there's no shortage of people that candidates could bring on the campaign trail, who they could have town halls with to really personalize the effect that this restructuring of the federal government and U.S. society is having on people.
And you brought up two issues that we'll start to talk about right now, but definitely we'll talk about it on the other side. And I want to go back to Avis because of the April 5th protest. And as Brandon said, Avis, it's supposed to be the biggest one to date, but I'm sure you've seen a lot of Black women on social media saying, we are not going. I'll give you this last 30 seconds before the break. Are you going?
No.
Okay.
I'm not. I'm not. I am fighting back in other ways, but I understand the reason for that. The reality is that Black women and Black people have put our bodies on the line for this country for centuries. And we've seen the abuse and the death that we've gotten as a result. The degree to which we have a free society is because we fought for it. We've given people freedoms that they have immigrated to this country to take advantage of, only to come here and support someone that ends up deporting their families back to wherever, not even where they came from. So I think what is happening right now is that Black people are saying, if you want it, you go out there and get it. And I would say, secondly, another concern that I have, honestly, specifically as it relates to Black people and policing. We know what it looks like in terms of having our bodies on the front lines as compared to potentially other people's bodies on the front lines. And so I think that there are other things that we can do, and we can talk about that later because that would take more than 30 seconds. But I would just say, it's time for other people to be on the front lines. And if there is some reaction with regards to policing around that, it's time for somebody else to take the brunt of that.
Hold on, everyone, because I do want to drill down on that a little bit more. We're going to take a really quick break, but don't forget, you can hear this in every edition of the Daily Drum Inside segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The Original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM, channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation at the Reporters Roundtable. My guests are James Wright, DC political reporter for the Washington Informer, political analyst Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, and Brandon Tinsley, national politics reporter for Capital B News. As we were talking on the other side before the break, we were talking about specifically Black women. Maybe this has to do with my, my algorithms. So you know who I'm listening to.
He has Black women viewing preferences.
Respectfully, yes. But had a moment. But I will say, in all seriousness, that I saw something this morning where there was a video of a sister, and there was this kind of disembodied voice that was talking about the April 5th protests and against the Trump administration, and the sister stood up and she was about to walk off camera. Then you heard that disembodied voice say, "I have a message for Black women. Sit your down." And she sat right back. And I think that is what we're hearing. Avis, some final thoughts about that, and then James, I want to hear about your algorithms too.
No, but the 92% has said we've been there, we've done that, we told you, and I think this is also a little bit of a lingering hurt from what happened with the election, because honestly, I believe that clearly a lot of people who are now finding out, it's hard for me to believe that there was any logical reason for their vote other than the fact that they didn't want a Black woman in the White House. And I think that a lot of Black women took that personally, and now they're saying, well, you got what you voted for. You go out there and work to undo the mess that you created.
Interesting. James.
Well, let me just say that I agree with what Dr. Avis is saying. A lot of people are nonchalant about tomorrow, April the 5th. I will not be there because I will be in the community at a different assignment. But let me just say that I've heard a lot of commentators, Black commentators, particularly on MSNBC, and that's what I listen to. I don't listen to that other one. I don't have time to laugh like that. But the reason why I believe that people are really getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. They want somebody else to go out there and fight for the rights of all people, not always us. And it's time for other folks to step up to the plate. And this is what people are telling me, Harold, all the time. Every time we step up to the plate, we produce, things happen, people gain rights, people gain privileges. And then, as Avis alluded to, I think even you alluded to, then they go vote for somebody else, and that somebody else deports them to other countries. That's ridiculous. So we got to put a stop to this. So it's time for somebody else to step up to the plate, and that's what people are telling me.
Yeah, your thoughts about that also, Brandon. Not only, more broadly Black people, but specifically that Black women are stepping up, but planning to step out of the picture tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about this, I also think about there's a different. People are thinking about what are the best ways that the most effective ways that they can participate in this moment, right? And I think that for some people, different sort of friends I've talked to, different sorts of historians, professors I've talked to have talked about, there's a real sense of if you are a diehard Trump supporter, it is almost like a death drive that you're participating in. It's almost like a death cult that you are participating in. And what is the best way that you can actually push back against that? Is it going to mass protests? Is it trying to figure out how you can use the bit of legal legislative authority or powers that you have to rein people in, to put up guardrails, to reinforce the guardrails that we have? And so I also think about it in that, I think, darker way in terms of where can you actually make change if it's not changing people's minds? Just because I think there are also a lot of people who they've seen what Trump and Elon Musk have done and are unmoved. And so is participating in a mass protest the most effective or the best use of someone's time? And so I think that's another sort of like strand of this conversation that I've been hearing.
James, there is another protest planned tomorrow at 11 o'clock at what is affectionately known as Blacksonian at the Smithsonian's Museum of African American History and Culture at 11 a.m. tomorrow. And there's also supposed to be a march to the Washington Monument as a result of that. Just outside of the protest, can you sum up for me the feeling that the administration is not just coming for Black folks, but coming for the most popular museum on the National Mall since the Air and Space Museum? This is our house.
This is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard of. Good grief, the Bushes were one of the main supporters of that particular museum. That museum draws people of all races, all colors, all creeds, all economic backgrounds. I mean, I don't understand why in the world would the Trump administration try to undermine that? I mean, is there something they're afraid of? Now, I know the reason why, but the reason is because it's just plain ridiculous. That museum is a testament to what America is about. If the Trumpies are really that threatened by it, then maybe they should do something else. Maybe they should build their little museum with their little Black people somewhere on the mall, and with Tiger Woods and folks like that, something like that. But come on. I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous. This is really getting ridiculous how Trump is attacking Black culture, especially when Black culture is not really, I don't want to say a threat, but what I want to say is that it's really not a relevance to what they want to do in a really broader sense.
Avis?
Well, I think it is relevant because let's just be real about who these people are. Like this is a white supremacist organization, in essence, that is running the country right now. They are upheld by white supremacists. We know that Trump is the son of a Klansman. I would say that he himself harbors those views. He has surrounded himself with people like Stephen Miller, who harbors those views. He clearly is calling out to white supremacist organizations who harbor those views. And so this is about hate. And it's actually very consistent with other things that they have done for years. For example, banning our books. And since being in office, eliminating references to Black heroes in Arlington Cemetery, deleting Black people off of Department of Defense websites. A few of them, they've been called out and shamed so much that they put them back, like Jackie Robinson, for example.
Yeah.
But how many others were completely disappeared? I mean, they have been on this tirade of trying to disappear Black culture. And I think that is in line with everything else that they've done. His number one thing he did on day one was get rid of, call DEI illegal, which it is not, and then do everything that he could to undermine it, putting in place all of these patently unqualified white men in all these spaces that are doing dumbass things every time you turn around, like sharing top secrets over Signal. So I have to tell you, this is an example of what we have in office. This is about white supremacy, white racist attacks. And when you are in that specific mind frame, the logical reason why you would do this is because your hope is that over time, if you erase the evidence of the contributions of a people, you are able to disappear the impact of a people for future generations to see. And that makes it easier for you to lie about their irrelevance and make you appear superior when you are not. Like that, that to me is the reason behind this. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't fight back. Now, that is something that we need to fight for.
That part, I think, is really critical, Brandon, about, how does one really fight back? I mean, we all know how long it has taken this country to build a house of knowledge and history about Black people. I mean, we have, museums and, in various and sundry cities, and we have archives in various and sundry cities and the like. But to have this as the golden centerpiece of the National Mall, and now it appears that this is the first shot to take it down, Brandon. And this is, for some people, probably almost as difficult to take as was the loss of Kamala Harris in the election.
Yeah, and I think one thing I don't want to lose sight of when we're talking about this museum is also the place of this museum. Like, obviously the National Mall, but we're talking about this thing that is in Washington, D.C. And so I think this sort of push against the African American History Museum is of a piece with what we're seeing. Dr. Avis just mentioned this with like National Arlington Cemetery, but also the district itself, right? We've seen the increased rhetoric about getting rid of home rule. We've seen Black Lives Matter Plaza being raised in recent weeks. Yeah. But the legacy of what DC used to be majority Black, but I think still in a lot of people's minds there is this deep racial component that is still here. And so when we're talking about the African American History Museum, it actually it clicks in my mind why they would come for this. Obviously, don't agree with it, but it tracks with all the other things that we have seen over the past couple of months, where it really is this. And I'm trying to remember how some of my sources have put it to me, but this really precise dismantling of Black history, Black cultural contributions, in a way that, if you don't have history to stand on, then what are you standing on, right? And I think this is something that we've really been seeing in an incredibly precise way over the past few weeks, and it almost feels like it's like death by 1,000 cuts sort of thing.
Yeah, James.
Can I just say really quickly?
Go ahead, just real quick.
Super quick. I also want to say that I believe that this is an example of psychological warfare. The reason why you attack this, it is exactly to create that stab in the heart sort of feeling that many of us feel as a result of this. And, going after this, going after our heroes, going after our history in this way. It's meant to make you stand down spiritually, mentally. It's meant to make you give up, to make you feel defeated. And the most powerful thing that we can do in this moment is not to allow that pleasure. It's to understand that they can't beat our spirits. And though they may have some short-term victory with whatever they plan to do now, just know that we need to be organizing ourselves such that as soon as this person is wherever he's going to ultimately end up being, because we will make sure that he's not there forever, we need to be ready, willing, and able to reconstruct and rebuild and make it bigger and better than it ever was previously. And that needs to be a big part of our focus right now.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was referring to, that same kind of emotional difficulty that a lot of Black people felt after the election. A lot of folks went dark. They got quiet because they needed their own kind of a mental health space to to deal with that. And I think that was spot on. James, I do want to ask you briefly about Cory Booker. More than 25 hours, the reality, the symbolism of breaking Strom Thurmond's record of speech on the floor.
I want to say two things about the great Cory Booker. Number one, he stood there for 25 hours and 5 minutes, and he talked about how we need to bring America back from the clutches of the Trumpy people. And he talked about positively about what needs to be done in order to bring back what really America is about, and not the white supremacist stuff, but what it is when you have this pluralistic society that we have. And number two, I love the fact that his fellow senators, particularly my senator, U.S. Senator Angela Also Brooks, and Lisa Rochester were there supporting him 100% all of the time. It just shows that with unity, things can happen. I am very proud that he broke the record of a segregationist, Strom Thurmond, in terms of what he was advocating. He was advocating for all of the people to believe in this great idea called America, and not what Strom Thurmond did, who wanted to separate America.
Yeah, well said. Just watching that incredible physical feat, but also the muscular intellectualism of what he shared was masterful. Yes. It was masterful, and it doesn't matter what your politics are. You can't help but give him his flowers, because that's a record that had not been broken in many decades. Brandon, I briefly want to talk about TikTok. This is something that you've been following. Today, the president also signed another executive order extending the deadline 75 days before shutting down TikTok. Talk to me about your reporting on this.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is sort of, well, I don't want to curse, but it messes with your mind.
Well, let's not do that.
Yeah.
We'll let Avis do that, but no.
Yeah, I held back actually a little bit, but
I think it messes with people's minds, right? I mean, it's destabilizing. It strips away sort of any sort of like certainty. And as my colleague Leah Wright and I have been reporting, for some Black TikTok creators, this is more than just a viral moment, but it was something that it was a platform that they were able to turn into a business, something that was a little more flexible, something that allowed them to lean into their own sort of like creative impulses. If people had caregiving responsibilities, or they had a job with like really strict hours, but this was something that they could do at a different time, it allowed that sort of flexibility. But it was something that made that provided a degree of profitability, I think, to Black people who needed it. And so when we talk about how destabilizing this like Willie won't he with the TikTok ban, I think that is what I think about is those Black creators out there who need it, and also not just people who need it for their own sort of financial purposes, but I think about what TikTok can be for as a resource, right? If you're trying to reach a certain demographic of people, a certain group of people, there's a way that people use TikTok videos to talk about history, talk about Black history. They use it to get information to people who might not know where else to get information from. And so I just think about it as, even if I personally don't really use TikTok, maybe I'm out of that age range. But, I know a lot of folks who do use TikTok. And, it's more than just those sorts of viral moments. So I think for a lot of people, there's quite a bit at stake with this.
James, let's talk about local crime, specifically DC. Mayor Bowser has, of course, rolled out her plan to, address youth crime, juvenile investigative response unit. And when I say Mayor Bowser, I speak specifically of her administration. They want to bring more resources to keep young people out of trouble. Your thoughts about this initiative?
Look, Harold, I've been covering DC for, and I don't want to give my age, but for decades. Okay, I look at Brandon and I get jealous. But let me say, it seems like, and I know the mayor is doing what she can, but Harold, every time you turn around, there's a new initiative to attack juvenile crime. And it's different, but it's the same thing. They give it a different name. They give it a different leader, but it's the same thing. Why can't this administration just stay with one program and just stay with it? And instead of giving it a different name every year, just stick with the fundamentals of what is needed in order to address juvenile delinquency and crime, which is basically opportunities, giving people housing, stressing the importance of education, et cetera, et cetera. And, and I guess it's the thing about being under pressure from the Trump administration. But come on, I mean, even during the Biden years, there was a brand new juvenile program for that. Come on, let's be consistent. Let's stick with what you have and do what you have to do and keep it going.
Well, Avis, outside of DC, let's just talk about youth violence, youth behavior or misbehavior. You live in Prince George's. You know about the curfew for National Harbor and the like. Anecdotally, do you think that it's working?
Something else.
There you go. Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was literally down, I live in National Harbor, and I was literally out with some friends of mine at a restaurant to witness in person the event that caused the what ultimately happened in terms of the curfew. And then the other day, it was just in the news about apparently this big melee at Pentagon City Mall that caused the mall to close down. Here's what I believe. I don't really know all the details about the recurring program that just gets rebranded every year, but I wish that there was a way in which there could be more investment in specific things for young people to be able to do. It's my belief that a pound of prevention is worth more, than a dash of cure, right? And what other things can be developed? And I know we're talking money now, but what other things can be developed so that we could capture the imagination, the creativity, the intelligence, and the attention of young people so that they would have other things to do with their time other than, unfortunately, getting into issues like this that could lead to significant jail time, perhaps, for them in the future and getting them caught up in the prison industrial complex. Let's not let our human capital be wasted in that way. Let's figure out how we can really engage them in something that would keep their attention, that would be of interest to them, that will allow them to be able to grow up and mature and make the most of their lives rather than going down the rabbit hole of these just very unfortunate incidents.
Brandon, Avis just touched on something that was shared with me by the new chair of the Prince George's County Council, Edward Burrows III. He said, kids are bored. And, the saying, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. So, what is the evangelistic solution to addressing this?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I think about the sort of amorphous, nebulous conversation of crime, I think about this book that came out a little less than 10 years ago by James Foreman Jr. called Locking Up Our Own. And it really was looking at, why during the civil rights movement, why in the 80s and the 90s were so many Black political leaders sort of in favor of these harsher penalties, harsher laws for sentencing laws. And sort of when you take a look at the broader sort of campaign that people wanted, they wanted everything, right? Like they wanted to feel more secure in their communities, but they also wanted better schools. They wanted grocery stores. They wanted parks. They wanted places where people could hang out. That wasn't just, on the street or at a grocery store or something. They wanted all of the things, but the only thing that they end up getting is more police, is harsher penalties, harsher laws. And so, I think back to that because like in some ways, I feel like the answer is there for people, right? I think it's what we've been talking about already, which is making it so that people actually can have a better quality of life. People can have things to do in their community. But those are never the things that that political leaders invest in. It is more often than not, it is looking for more punitive sort of reactions. I really like how Dr. Avis put it about, looking at, cures more than sort of prevention. And so I do think that the blueprint is there. It's a matter of being able to sort of generate the political will to really pursue it forcefully, I think.
Real quick, I only have a little bit of time left. 57 years ago today, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. James, your thoughts about then and now?
Real quick, I was 4 years old when, yes, I'm giving my age.
Yeah,
I was 4 years old when that happened. And I'll never forget that day, Harold, because I never saw my father, who was a strong Black man, so upset in his life when he heard about it on television. And it's a day that sticks with me. It sticks with me.
Yeah. Brandon, your thoughts?
Well, first, James just made it so easy, but I was not even a twinkle in my parents' eye in 1968. But no, I think about it, especially the fact that we just had Inauguration Day, which fell on MLK Day. And so to me, it just really sort of drives home the sort of like lasting influence of King, right? Of the civil rights movement, much more broadly, and how there's so much to learn from that history that, as we've also been saying, is being erased. But that's what but I'm really thinking about is just how present that history still is. I mean, Cory Booker brought it up many times during his speech, talking about people that came before him, talking about John Lewis. And so like, I think especially for Black folks, like that history is still present with us.
Yeah. Avis, you'll get the last 30 seconds. Your thoughts about the anniversary of the assassination of King.
It's really just interesting to think about this day and think about what is happening right now to Black people in America. And we are in a country that, and many really honestly murdered most of our leaders. And we are also now at a space where a lot of it just makes me so furious when I think about so much that he lived and died for, and so many other people lived and died for. The Cretan, who is in the White House right now, completely obliterated via executive order on his very first day. Mm-hmm. And so, if anything, for his memory and for his honor, we need to make sure that we are here and we are ready, willing, and able to fight back.
Well said. Thank you all, Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, James Wright, and Brandon Tinsley. I appreciate your time. That is the Daily Drum for this Friday, April 4th. For News Director Renee Nash, I'm Harold Fisher. Good night, everyone.